Hi, and welcome to Quick Takes with the Diverse Learners Cooperative. Last week, we talked about dual identified learners, learners that both have a disability and an EL classification and qualify for additional supports and services in both areas. And today, we're going to make some of these ideas a bit more real by talking through a case study of a dual identified learner. You might remember that we talked about several roles we take on as teachers when working with dual identified learners. It starts with appropriate identification and then providing targeted services based on their ILP and their IEP. As we do this, questions will certainly arise, and we can leverage our specialists to help us address needs and increase their access to instruction that we're delivering. And as always, we communicate with families. They are a wealth of knowledge and support when it comes to meeting their child's needs. So today we have two specialists with us, Mary Matthews, a special education teacher, and Mary Rakes, an EL teacher. And we're going to dive deep into one specific student case study so that it may illuminate both some strategies you might use and the thought process of how we got there. Our goal is to provide a few more of these videos for you in the future so that you can hear about a range of students, some of whom will remind you of your own. So let's dive in. So this is Julio. He's a third grader who's been identified as both an English learner and a student with a developmental delay. He receives EL co-teaching services, and he's received these services since he was enrolled in kindergarten. And his access listening score is a 2, his speaking score is a 2.5, his reading score is a 4.6, and a writing score of 3.7. He participates in a systematic reading intervention for his the developmental delay classification, and he receives OT services. His teachers have noted that he has difficulty answering questions in class, he's often off topic, and his writing is difficult to read. He has some sensory and organization challenges as well. He reads grade level text, but he doesn't retain the information that he's read, especially when it comes to abstract concepts. Math word problems are a particular challenge, and he has trouble sticking with the work when he doesn't understand it quickly. So let's hear more from our specialists about what supports we might put in place for a student like Julio. So Mary, what sorts of tools can we, his teachers, use that will support him?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things that jumps out to me here is that he does struggle with processing language. And so this may indicate a need for some additional scaffolds, whether that's visuals or just really consistent routines across subjects or across classes that will help to increase his comprehension, as well as his processing of oral content delivery, as well as oral directions that are provided by teachers. So for example, with reading, it may be helpful to add some visuals when possible, or when not possible, to chunk the reading in a way that allows for frequent checks for understanding, whether that's with consistent questions that we're asking him, or even sentence stems or frames that we can provide him, so he has a better understanding of how to answer questions that teachers are asking about a text. For math, for example, this might look like having a model or a step-by-step guide nearby so that he's not randomly picking strategies. He has a very clear way of attacking the problem or the task in front of him. Adding some of these consistent visual structures will really help to make those abstract concepts much more concrete, and that will help him not only understand it better, but stay organized and on task as well. All of this will be helpful even more so if we can preview the material if possible. So at any point, if teachers are able to spend a couple minutes ahead of time, just giving him a quick insight into what the topic is going to be about or some key vocabulary words, this will help him tap into some background knowledge as well as prepare him for the language that will be used later on in the lesson so that he can answer more appropriately as well as stay on task.
Great, those are some really helpful ideas. Mary, how can the EL service time be more effective to help close gaps in comprehension?
First of all, I would note that everything that Mary Matthews said will help in that area as well. But we want to be thinking specifically about how the student's receiving services, and that's through the co-teaching model. And so we're going to think about how we can really leverage having two teachers in the classroom at the same time. So I would suggest both teachers that are in there are using a flexible model that allows both of them to interact and work with the student. Sometimes for students that are dual identified or are EL students, having multiple explanations from different perspectives helps unlock something that we may not have realized. I might explain something in a different way than Brooke might explain it, which could be really beneficial for this student to have multiple perspectives. I would focus the co-teaching support that we're giving this student on the receptive language skills, so reading and listening, doing check-ins throughout the lesson, providing them with structural visual supports, things like graphic organizers. So as he's listening to something that's being taught in class, he has a way to categorize all that information in a consistent way over time, something that he's done before. So we're not going to change it up all the time. We'll use something consistent. And we also want to give him lots of different ways that he can process what he's learning, give him a lot of think time. L1 partners, so another student that speaks his other language would be really helpful sometimes for discussion and might help him process the text in a new way, because sometimes he might be still focused on processing English and also processing the text. So if we can remove one of those barriers, that might be supportive for his comprehension skills.
Great. So when thinking more holistically here, how can we better serve this student, Mary?
Yeah, so based on his grade level, I would assume that Julio is due for a reevaluation soon, since developmental delay must be reassessed by age 9, which is right around that end of second, beginning of third grade year. So I'd encourage the team to do a comprehensive reevaluation to really dive deep into his academic needs and pinpoint those areas that we need some further skill instruction in order to help him grow year over year, since the team noted some slowed growth there. I'd also take some of the contextual and family information into consideration, though, and consider whether we need another assessment for autism and whether that's appropriate at this time based on what the family shares. So again, that communication with family will be key here to make a full team decision. In the meantime, until that reevaluation is done, I would ensure that whatever accommodations are in Julio's IEP are in place across every classroom, again, to promote that consistency, as well as with those structures and procedures that increase understanding. As far as the sensory issues and the handwriting issues that are noted here, since he does currently receive some consultation from an occupational therapist, I would just check in with them again to make sure that we are addressing all of his needs. They'll be a great resource for both sensory and handwriting support.
Great. So what I'm hearing is that we need to access all of our specialists that are serving Julio and his family and make sure everyone is on the same page, but then look at specific structures and supports related to visuals, structured routines, comprehension supports, and leveraging our other teammates, like our co-teachers in this work as well. Thanks for sharing, Mary and Mary. While I heard some great specific strategies too that we could use, the strategy of talking through a student's special education and EL information as a team would also be really helpful in serving this student or other students that are dual identified. We've put a resource in the links below where you can do just the same thing with your team. And we'll be back in future weeks to talk through other student case studies and give you more ideas about how to serve dual identified learners. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.